All right, welcome everybody. We are going to be working on these bottom four questions on the notes. On these bottom four questions, our strategy or what we're asked to do is to basically go backwards. Okay, we're asked to take the answers and go backwards up to the equation that we started with. Now, this is no surprise if you've been in my class. I always tell math students, you learn how to do something and then you learn how to undo it the very next day. Right, and so we learned how to factor and solve, and now we're going to try to unsolve, which sounds kind of like a waste of time, but it is interesting, and there is a good reason why we're doing it. Now, one thing we're going to see is that these questions have a lot of vocab in them. Given the roots, write an equation for the parabola in standard form. All three of these things you might not be very comfortable with. I forgot I wrote something on the board. Give me a second to erase it. But parabola and standard form, you don't really need to know what these are yet. You'll learn about them in a day. But roots, you do need to know about roots, okay? The thing is that in math, when it comes to answers, this is something you do want to write down. There are four things that are all the same. And I'm going to write this little four things that mean answers on the board probably like 10 times all year. Roots, which are the same thing as solutions, which are the same thing as zeros, which are the same thing as x-intercepts, which I'm just going to put x-ins. Now, these four things all mean the same thing, okay? And the reason we have four different names for them is because there's a lot of different ways to talk about quadratics. You could talk about solving quadratics. You could talk about factoring quadratics. You could talk about graphing quadratics, right? And when you're talking about graphing, you'd want to use x-intercepts. If you're talking about solving, you'd want to use solutions. And so that's why there's so many different names, because we're talking about them in different ways. But if we know that the roots are -5 and 7, that means the solutions are also -5 and 7. And so that means x equals -5, x equals 7. Now, let's look at a question that we solved. Okay, let's look at this one. If we're trying to start right here and make our way back to this, the only math that we're going to need to do that is to FOIL these two things. And foiling, we've been doing that for actually years. We're FOIL masters. So this question shouldn't be that tough. All we really need to do is FOIL these together. But before we can FOIL these solutions, we need to turn them back into factors. So again, we're thinking backwards. What was the factor if the answer was -5? Awesome job, Hazel. Awesome job. Because we know that the solutions and the factors, remember, factors is not in this list, right? Factors are close to this list, but they're the opposite. And so if it's a +5, then of course it's going to be a -7. And now all we have to do is factor these together and we'll be done with the question, okay? We've got our roots, which are solutions, which means these are solutions. We turn the solutions into factors, and now we need to just FOIL it. X squared -7x plus 5x -35. We need to combine these middle two like we always do. And we're done. That's the whole thing, okay? These questions are extremely easy if you know how to start them, okay? The math is not hard at all. You have to know how to start them, though, okay? And you're going to start them all the same way, but it's just one of these things that students maybe forget, they kind of struggle with a little bit. if you're tough, if you get to these questions on the homework and you don't know what to do, it's not because you did the first step and you don't know how to finish it. It's literally just because you don't even know how to start them. So when it comes to starting them, this is all you have to do. And if you forget, go watch the video on YouTube where I'm teaching you right now and watch it a second time. Let's do number 17. It will get a little bit more confusing here. Right, with the fraction. So we know that our roots are -3 and 2/3. And roots are the same thing as solutions. And so x equals -3 and x equals 2/3. We need to turn these solutions into factors so that we can FOIL them. This one's easy, right? What's this one? +3. This one, Now let's look at one of these where we got these answers, right? Let's do a little research. Let's look up. I think it was on the front of your page, on the bottom. Let's look at number 8. Okay? We got answers here that were fractions, right? Where did the 2 in the denominator come from in the factor? In front of the x, right? And so we know that if there's a number in the bottom, that's a number that we had to divide away from the x, right? So we're going to use that same strategy to help us here. Not quite. This number 3, good to see you, Mr. White. This number 3 had to be divided off the x, right? So that means it had to have been 3x. Because the 3 had to be divided away from it. And then the 2, now basically we've already handled the 3. So it's a +2, and what does that mean should be here? A -2. And if you're not sure if this is right, you can just solve it and see if you go backwards to what you started with, right? I mean, you can do this, 3x - 2 equals 0, add the 2, 3x equals 2, divide by 3, x equals 2/3. So, yeah, this is good. So, once we get this far, we've done, the hard part. Now we just need to FOIL it. And I'm going to go really fast here. 3x squared minus 2x plus 9x minus 6. Combine these two middle terms together. 3x squared plus 7x minus 6 equals 0. Done. And to do one more really, really quickly, and to just start this next one, if my roots, which is the same thing as my solutions, are 1/5 and 2/3, the way I like to do it is I like to say this 5 in the bottom had to have been divided off the x, which means the 5 in the bottom had to have started in front of the x. And then the top number is a +1, so it should be -1. Yep, 3x minus 2, because I say that's not a 2. Because I say the 3 had to have started right here, and it's not there anymore, so it had to be divided away, and now it's 3x minus 2. Now, of course, you'd have to FOIL that, but I think we understand what we're doing. So that is how you do these questions where you're given the roots and you're trying to solve the equation. It's working backwards. It's mostly FOILing. That's pretty much it.